to Night Shift Delirium, a podcast about junior doctors and the world that surrounds them. I'm your host, Victoria, a junior doctor based in England, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking with a global citizen, Dr. Edward Ofori. He is an assistant professor in Chicago and a pharmacist as well. He's going to tell us about his story and his experiences abroad, locally, and everywhere in between. You're definitely going to enjoy this week's episode. Welcome to our shift, y'all. Welcome to the podcast. On today's episode, we're chatting with Ed, who is a pharmacist based in Chicago. So can you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Oh, thank you very much. I would say Edward Ofori is a Ghanaian born and bred. I will say that I was born in Brekum, which is a little bit central of Ghana. I would say a little bit to the south of Ghana, which is in West Africa. I have 6 siblings. I think I'm the 4th of those. And growing up in that area in Ghana has so many things that came with it, which I'm going to talk about today. But then I've also moved on in my educational ladder. I've been one of the very few that were lucky to make it this far in my group. I would say that basically married, don't have no kids yet. I'm assistant professor of pharmacy in Chicago State University. Before joining Chicago State, I was a postdoctoral fellow at Southern Institute of Research in Alabama. So basically, that's a little bit just about me.
Cool. So you work primarily as a professor. Is that correct?
Correct. So I do teach in a college of pharmacy, and I do research as well. And I do a lot of community outreach and service. And I think a lot of people know me for my community outreach. Academia, usually it's just a very few people who follow your research that know you. So I tend to do more for the community in terms of education. And that is what a lot of people know Dr. Ofori for. It's mostly by my services.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning. What led you to pharmacy to begin with? Were there people that you were looking up to growing up that sort of laid a blueprint for you, or did you just find it on your own?
Great question. So I was born to, I would say, what we describe in Ghana as peasant farmers. My dad was a farmer and my mom was. What it meant was that they didn't have much education. But I think my dad believed in education a lot. My mom was a little bit nonchalant about it. She didn't really care. But my dad knew what education meant because he didn't really go to school. A lot of the time, whenever he received like a mail, it was kind of hard to find someone to read it for him. So growing up, I realized, I need to help my parents because I got to stay in school to be able to help them read their letter, right? That's where it started from. And that motivation kind of carried me when I was in school to pay attention. My mom and my dad always said, you got to pay attention when you're in school. So I think when I was like in 4th grade, that's when I realized that I had a potential to remember a lot of things that is taught in class. And in addition, I could potentially like listen to other people and I could remember the stuff. The funny part about it is that my little brother, who's my, the next in line, he wasn't great at that, So it always amazed me, like, why is it I'm able to remember a lot of things at that age? And he couldn't. So that was one thing that I decided to think, there's something that has to do with it, different brains. We're in the same house, eating the same food, right? And I'm on top of my class and he's not. So going forward, I met a teacher in 5th grade who believed in me. What he told me was that if I believe in something, I can do it. And I shouldn't let anything stop me. So those words resonated with me for the rest of my life. And I remember the guy's name. His name was Atta. He really motivated me in 5th grade. I got to 6th grade and the rest was history. But then when I got to middle school, I had a guy who used to come to visit my other brother, and he was a science student. And then he would tell us about the science experiments and how you're able to generate electrostatics and all this kind of stuff. They were cool stuff. And being a little boy, when I saw those things, I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. How did he do that magic? And then he told me it was science. So right there, I started developing affection for science. So what I did was, and I know this is crazy, it will sound crazy to those who are listening, is that I went to the library and I stole a book, and it was a science book. I wasn't supposed to sneak out with that book, but I wanted to know how to generate a battery like a light using batteries, right? And I knew that I could find it in a science book. And this was me in seventh grade, I think. So I went to the office and I flipped through the pages and I saw the experiment. So I wanted to repeat the same experiment. So I stole the book and took it with me home, and I read the book and went and picked me batteries from like people who have thrown them away, got me some little conductors here and there, and I was able to connect them in the right way and actually get a light, you know. And mind you, this was in the 1990s. To some of you who are in other Western worlds, you would think there was light everywhere, right? But Ghana we still was experiencing a lot of, darkness, right? In terms of electricity, energy. So when I did that, that was actually what I used whenever there was no light to study,
Wow.
So I designed my own kind of like a lamp, steady lamp, using the book that I got from the library. And then I realized, you know what, if I can read, actually my dad had me somebody that could teach me how to read. That was number one. That was very key in my life. So, fast forward, I gravitated towards science, went to high school, specialized in science, was a science major. All I knew was just focus on my books. And then when I graduated from high school, it was between med school and pharmacy. But what I realized was that I was very good in chemistry, so I felt, chemist, pharmacist, I'll do better in that area. So I applied to pharmacy school in Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi. And I was fortunate to be selected, or I got admission for entry in 2003. Graduated from pharmacy, I would say one of the top students in the class. But I mean, if you ask me what really motivated me to do pharmacy, it was, first of all, it was experience to go into science. And the reason why I really wanted to be in health field was influenced by a friend who had schizophrenia. Part of the reason why when I went to do my PhD, I specialized in schizophrenia or mental illness for that matter. I do my research in neuropsychiatry because of that. This was a young guy who was nice. We all played when we were little. He was funny. We loved him to death. But when he hit his teenage age, we realized that he wasn't of himself. He started talking to himself. And a lot of the time, when they took him to the psychiatric hospital, when they brought him back, he was not the same person again. When they gave him the medicine, it made him very, how do I say, like quiet, extremely quiet. So at that time, I said to myself, maybe if they could get him a better drug, it would actually make this, I can have my friend back. Basically, that's what it was. So when I had a privilege to go to school, I realized maybe I can find a way to actually know what drugs are, because yeah, we all know what is wrong with people, but the question is the solution. So that actually motivated me to go into pharmacy and then eventually focus in drug discovery, which is how to make medicine to solve diseases that nobody really care about, like mental illnesses. A lot of pharmaceutical companies, until recently, they didn't really care about these kind of illnesses. So that is, in brief, what motivated me to go into science. And then also what led me into pharmacy and the drive to come this far, even after pharmacy school.
So there's a lot there that was really interesting. So this friend of yours, you grew up with him in your hometown, or you came across him later on?
So he was a dude that we grew up with in the same neighborhood. I still remember his name. His name was Clement. So he was a very funny guy, right? And we all love to be around somebody who cracks jokes and makes a lot of fun. He could do a lot of things, dance. Like this is a normal kid, right? That we all played with. But unfortunately, and it's so sad that may his soul rest in peace. He didn't live long because I think part of the reason was the medication. A lot of things that went on. His health just deteriorated, and he was a little, I think, 2 years older than me. He was in the same neighborhood, so I saw him go through that. Right, he couldn't function anymore. Everything was fine. All the body is fine except that now that I understand what is really going on because I know what it is, his neurons were not firing right, and that just basically ended his life. So I realized that it wasn't just the body, it's actually the mind. Like that was the first lesson in life, that you got to take care of your mind. One of the reasons why I'm a strong advocate of, mental health and also like neuropsychiatric research in terms of finding medicines that can potentially help people like my friend. So yes, we grew up with him. Yes.
It's interesting because, so I don't know if everyone who listens to the podcast knows, but I'm Ghanaian American. So obviously I was born and raised in America, but I'm quite connected to Ghana. And when it comes to mental health in Ghana, well, worldwide, but especially in Ghana, it is such a taboo thing. You see what people call madmen walking on the street. That actually, for me, was one of my, I think first time I went to Ghana, I was maybe 8. And I saw now what I know is someone who was schizophrenic. And I just didn't understand why they were roaming the streets naked, talking to themselves. And that was my first experience of health disparity and also mental illness. And that has really sort of motivated my own career as well. So it's interesting. So your friend, he went through what he was going through. He was taken to the hospital, given care. And, do you think there was community support as well, or not really that much community support? And in general, what do you think about the community support for mental health in Ghana?
I think that is a very good question that I always puzzles me, how we handle mental illness in Ghana and in Africa as a whole, and especially among the minority community, even in the United States. We perceive people as not being strong and the fact that it's their fault. So my friend, people started talking about he smoked cannabis. That's why he got schizophrenia. And then I came to learn that there's no link between the two, but that was the major driving, rumor about how he got sick because he did drugs and did this and that and that. I think community education is very important in Ghana, that a lot of people commit suicide in Ghana because they have no support. In Africa, a lot of people struggle with mental illness and people just think they're just weak. So with my friend, there wasn't that much societal support. He was shielded. He was never reintegrated into society. They were shy, so they never let him out. He was in chains. When I graduated from pharmacy school, he was still alive. I went and saw him. He was put, I believe, on chlorpromazine, I think, or I think stelazine, one of those drugs. And those of you who are listening who are in neuropsychiatry, he was experiencing some EPS, which is extrapyramidal side effects. And, his medication he wasn't managed well. So I had to talk to a psychiatrist I knew at the hospital at the time, that I have a friend who has this and that and that. So he prescribed some kind of anti-muscarinic agents for him that kind of reduced all these tremors and stuff that he was experiencing. That, to me, I'm wondering how many people who suffer, like the whole world, 1% or the population struggle with these things. And I'm wondering how many of them in Ghana even get any kind of support at all, because he was basically shielded from the rest of the community because the parents were ashamed to say that their child is mad, So mental illness, I think in Ghana, we have an F if you were to be graded on a scale of, we don't have the awareness. And what makes it even worse is that the social support system for these people who are this sort of, they're not mentally incapacitated, is non-existent.
Yeah, I remember when I was doing my own thesis research on like mood disorders. I think it was that year, The Lancet had published this photo for World Mental Health Day, and it was somebody in chains under a tree, and they were like meant to sweat out their mental illness or demons or whatever it was called. And I was so disappointed to learn that that photo was taken in Ghana, and this was the photo for World Mental Health Day. But at the same time, I remember this was probably 2011, 2012. And at the time, there were only maybe 13 registered psychiatrists in all of Ghana. And at the time, the population was about 23 million or something like that. So you can see that the resources are extremely stretched. Because what are 13 psychiatrists going to do for so many people when 1 in 3 people have mood disorders alone, So, I think it's definitely, it's good to sort of continue to pursue these things, especially in communities that you find throughout Ghana and throughout the world, really. So you mentioned that, and we'll get back to some other things, but you did mention that you do a lot of community outreach and things. Do you do anything specifically pertaining to mental health, or what's your focus of interest? Like, what's your interest in your outreach efforts?
Yes, I do a lot when it comes to mental health. Like that's my interest, right? To be able to let people be aware of it any way necessary, that it is actually real. It's not demonic. That a lot of Africans and people in Ghana think if someone has a mental illness is because it's demonic. I used to give a talk that adopt the talk as the mind can also get sick, or the brain can get sick too, which means the same way that you can have a stomach ache, you can also have some kind of mental illness. So people should start thinking in that way. I do go to a lot of programs to speak about mental illness. Last year I did that. Also in a community, like it's not only mental illness. I do work with a lot of online radio stations to kind of put some health, information out there, especially when it came to COVID. I spearheaded a lot of education in terms of COVID, just because I realized there was a lot of misinformation and not too many people were speaking up, but then me and a few people took it upon ourselves to, put the information out there, open a discussion. Let's talk it out and make sure that we don't only settle for misinformation. So yes, I do a lot of community outreach in terms of educational outreach and health information for that matter. Yes.
Okay, I do want to get into that, into your community and things like that. But before getting there,
January 2nd, 2021, Instagram, @vtramatin. My patient zero was a lovely man who was in hospital March of 2020 for a chest infection and poorly controlled diabetes. We'd heard about this strain of coronavirus, but knew little more than its presenting symptom was a cough and fever. It wasn't long before we closed the hospital to visitors, and his loving daughters called to wish their dad a happy birthday. I stood at the end of his bed, 2 meters away, and passed on their message. 2 days later, the entire ward was full of COVID-19 patients, and patient zero passed away, alone. Calling his family and breaking the news was an experience I will never forget. Today, I had my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. I got the vaccine for all of my patients who have died alone from COVID-19 and for their families who couldn't say goodbye and the collective grief we will all feel for years to come. I got the vaccine for my colleagues who are working tirelessly, sacrificing time with their families and friends to fight this terrible, terrible virus. And for all essential workers who haven't had a break in almost 1 year. And yes, I even got the vaccine for people with COVID fatigue who think seeing 1 or 2 friends won't do harm because they're tired of being alone, despite exponential rises in cases. I got the vaccine because I miss my family, whom I've seen a total of 10 days in the past year. I got the vaccine because I believe in herd immunity, and I know that herd immunity is a public health term which can only be achieved through vaccination. I trust the experts and scientists who built on years' worth of research and developed this vaccine. Science works. Let's do it, y'all. Vaccinate or isolate.
So you took us to you're developing your interest in science, working with batteries, reading books, getting to pharmacy at Tech. What then led you to was it PharmD or what then led you to do a PhD, and what brought you from Ghana to America?
Great. So that's a long story, but I'm going to make it short. So after high school, I gravitated towards pharmacy. Pharmacy is a bachelor's degree in Ghana. That's all you need to practice. Now it's a doctorate degree. And then after that, I became like a research assistant, or I should say what we call TAs. I did that with the Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry, and I continued to do my master's in pharmaceutical analysis for, I think, 2 years. After that, I realized that whilst I was doing my master's, I was working at Confanoche Teaching Hospital. So I was an internal medicine pharmacist at the Department of Medicine at the Confanoche Teaching Hospital in Kumasi. I served there for, I think, I worked with them for almost 2 years whilst I was doing my master's at the same time. So I practiced clinically and also did research at the same time. But then when I graduated from my master's, I still felt not there yet. I didn't have the skill that it takes to be able to help people, be able to develop things that I thought I wanted to. The drive and the passion kept pushing me that I need to get my doctorate. It just so happens that I met my advisor, who is the one that brought me to his lab. His name is Dr. Ablodepe, and I really, I would like to, say that he's one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. He brought me to his lab, and I never let him down. We did a lot of his area of research was schizophrenia too. I met him whilst I was doing my master's. I worked with him in Ghana, trying to find like plants that had some sort of effect on maybe schizophrenia or mental illness. So through that collaboration, because my master's was focused on natural products too. So through that, we got that connection, and I came to his lab, and we started working from there, and the rest is history. We've done so many projects. We've done so many publications. And so basically, I would say, from pharmacy school, it didn't stop there. It's just I had this burning desire to be able to get a doctorate, which will allow me or give me the skill that I can use to help people one way or the other, either through drug discovery or just by education.
Interesting. So you've come to America now, you're working, you're living. Do you think that you will ever go back to Ghana, or do you think you'll go to other countries? What is your sort of geographical aspiration?
Great. So I think that question is a very interesting one. I always would love to go back home to help out, right? A lot of the skills and a lot of us who end up here, very smart people from Ghana, tend to stay longer than usual because of the opportunities, right? And also like research, we our research capacity in Ghana is very in the infantry stage, it's not at the level that we are now, right? So what I'm doing currently is I'm collaborating with colleagues back home, right? So that I can serve as a way to give them some resources. We can write grants together and build things back there. Because I know how I felt when I was doing my master's to look for, materials, and it takes longer period of time to get them. So what I'm doing right now is collaborating with my colleagues who are in University of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, like where I know my colleagues are, we collaborate. To answer the question, I would love to, but I don't think it's the time. The time is not now. Maybe as time goes on and we're able to build a very good rapport, I would like to go and establish a very good industry, a good research, lab or something that will go a long way to solve problems like malaria, tuberculosis, all these diseases that are basically neglected by a farmer, to be able to help out with my people back home.
Good. So you mentioned sort of your colleagues and things, and I've seen things online, you have this cohort of people that seemingly are everywhere. So how are they your mates from school that you now have this like community with, or are they people that you sort of have met along the way in your journey here that you do sort of outreach and things with?
Yes, so it's both, right? I have people that I've known since college, and we still keep in touch. And then there are great people that I met along the line who share the same passion. So, whoever aligns with my vision and passion to help people and do research, I embrace whoever that person is, and we talk and we do things. I believe in action. I believe in doing things, not just talking about them. So that is basically how I formed a team. So I have a team that we currently work on Health Info Africa, which is a little organization that pharmacists, scientists, doctors, nurses, everybody included, to just create a platform to educate people about their health. So our theme was that the reason why we formed that is because a lot of the time scientists tend to be in their labs, make all these great discoveries, right? And then the end consumer has no clue what you're doing. And especially because science has such an interesting reputation, we wanted to bridge that gap, right? So we wanted to open the conversation to involve the ordinary person on the street. For instance, the COVID vaccine came out. Nobody knows about DNA, RNA, right? You tell somebody on the street you have a DNA vaccine. Oh my God, that is going to change us into an animal. So these are all conversations that never happened. It was only behind like a fume hood in the lab with the rats and stuff. We just know the scientists are just making something. Nobody brought those things into the layman's terms so they will understand. So that's the reason why we tend to, form that organization to be able to break this information to people. So basically, that's one thing that we kind of hold together. Anybody who shares the same vision, we tend to bring them on board.
I see. What advice would you give to someone who maybe they're in, I don't know, Kumasi somewhere, or maybe they're in south side of Chicago or something, and they're listening and they maybe feel that everything, it's not meant for them, like schooling or whatever, even if they have that ability? What advice would you give to someone?
So, our biggest fears is not that we are inadequate, right? It's just we are powerful beyond all measures. So you can do as much as you push yourself, right? And one thing that I learned from one of my friends is that you are strong as your weakness link, which means that you have to build the right network, right? You have to surround yourself with the right people, even if you are like teenager, you got to surround yourself with people that will help you achieve what you want to do. It is not impossible. If I showed you the classroom that I sat, right, and I know by now they've probably remodeled it, I just sat in the mud, like pure, what Ghanaian schools, right? There was no tarred floor, none of that. Whenever it rained, the rain would just go through the roof. Whenever there was a wind, school closes, that kind of environment. But that never stopped me from going to school even a single day, unless I was sick. I persevered, and I knew the only way out is to be able to get education, to be able to read, to be able to understand what the nature is and all of that. And let me tell you one interesting story. So not only did I go to the library to, get a book, this is what I used to do. I attended a very poor elementary school, right? And it was a district run school. And of course, when the district runs something, not always is always something. We had a lot of issues, including even getting teachers. At one time, I didn't have a teacher for almost half of the year, right? Mm. So what I used to do was that I was very good at soccer. I still play it. At a point, I was even torn between either doing professional play or just going to school, because I made it all the way to the national kind of team, like under 12 team. And my dad always pushed me that, hey, that's not going to take you anywhere. Go to school. But let's backtrack. So what I used to do, because I was good in sports, I had a lot of friends who were like rich kids, right? And they go to the better school. My dad, even though he had the money, he was a little stingy. He didn't want to take me to the rich school, right? He said, you'll be fine here. So what I used to do was that I would go to these rich kids, I would say, I'll teach you how to play soccer. But guess what? You got to bring me your book. And I will pick the book and I said, I'll keep it for a night. So I'll come home. If there's no lights, of course, I'll switch on my electric powered lamp, right? And I will stay up in the night and pretty much copy their notes. I did this for, I think almost, I would say maybe 4 years. Whenever at the end of the week, I'll go grab their book and I'll tell them, what did they teach you? And then I'll write down the notes. And also I'll ask them, what books do they use? I had a cousin at home who would teach me how to read. So that is how I was able to get the knowledge. So I basically fought for it. So nothing comes easy, right? If you're listening to me, you think it's not for you. I think it is for you. The only thing is you have to apply yourself, right? And if it was easy, everybody would be in that class, right? I always tell my students that if it was easy, this pharmacy class would be full. There will be people sitting outside. Because guess what? Everybody want to earn 6 figures, right? So if you made it here, it means you actually have the perseverance to do it. And it starts when you're little. It starts when you're young. If you have to beat laziness out of yourself and keep pushing. And what I realized is that you always find the results. If you need help, seek for it. Don't be shy. I was never shy to ask people to show me stuff. Guess what? Sometimes they show me and I know how to do it better than them, right? So everybody has the potential. For so long as you have a brain and you have, whoever supreme person you pray to, you always will have a way out of everything that you put yourself to. So if you're listening to me and you feel like giving up, don't do it. There were times I felt like it, but guess what? I always saw the light at the end of the tunnel. That, I've seen people go through the system and they did not die. And that gives me hope, right? So that is my only advice that I give to people when they tell me, man, I can't do this pharmacy school. I can't do this to med school. I can't do this. And I say, you can. It's just your mind is deceiving you. If you put your mind to it and you practice, right? And you put yourself to it, you can do anything, because the brain is such a powerful tool that we have that we underestimate.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely agree with all of that. 2 last questions. So I consider myself a global health practitioner. I think you are definitely also a global health practitioner. Where do you see global health going in the future?
Yes. So the world is getting smaller and smaller, right? Um, I remember like when COVID-19 started, some people were like, oh, that's just in China. Until it started killing people in New York. And it started killing people all the way in the countryside of the city or the country, in the nation. And I think that should tell us that global health, public health, all of these things involve everyone. There was shutdowns around the world and everything because of public health, not just with infectious disease, with all kinds of illnesses, hypertension, diabetes, diseases that we can prevent, smoking, all these things are things that we need to pay attention to the same way we pay attention to fashion, sports, entertainment. Whenever I go on radio and I'm giving, talk about health, I get very few views. But then when I see people who are giving commentary on something, there's a lot of people that tune in to listen, right? It's because nobody wants to think about their health until it's kind of a little too late, right? Yeah. So I see that global health is the way to go because the food we eat, all right, the water we drink all affects our system, right? So for instance, maybe in the past, diabetes used to be a problem in the West. Now maybe it's a problem in Africa. Why? Because of the way we look at the West and we copy socially the lifestyle, sedentary lifestyle. A lot of cars now. People don't walk anymore. We eat a lot of junk. We think it's cool. So you can see how small the world has become. Internet is there. You can reach people. You can transport stuff. So materials move around. Information moves around. And we are equally affected at this point. So to me, in my opinion, global health is something that is key, infectious disease-wise, non-communicable diseases. It's spreading by means of just us associating and trying different food, different cultures and things like that. These are all things that we can potentially utilize in a good way, but at the same time, you can also harm a lot of people that unfortunately will have some kind of diseases from it. So I think with COVID and with all these examples I've given, global health is key, and we just have to educate people to be aware of it, because the more you keep saying it, the more the chances that you're going to gain people that will start, trying to listen to you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We have to be aware and be making conscious decisions.
Correct.
Okay. So my last question is a question that I've asked a lot in season 1. I won't be asking that many in season 2, but I think it's appropriate because you're a pharmacist. So the question is, if you were to choose a drug that embodies you, which drug would it be and why? Now, my example, I always say that I'm diazepam because I'm very calm, I'm chill. However, there are serious side effects if used incorrectly. So what drug would you say you are?
Ooh, that's a good one. So I'm a dopamine fanatic, right?
Okay.
I just love the drug dopamine. It's not a drug per se, but a neurotransmitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything that either blocks it or, stimulates it, which in some cases is not the best, right? Um, I'm really enthused about it. I would say I'll go with Haldol.
Okay.
So Haldol is a very interesting molecule or drug that helps people with schizophrenia. Very potent drug. Used it a lot in the emergency room without even thinking about it twice. But it's a very interesting molecule that has helped a lot of people with their positive symptoms, and I think it was discovered in the 1950s and it's still being used in the practice, even though it has a lot of side effects and things of that nature. I think dopamine is a good thing. When you need it, you get it. Like you all know, your nucleus accumbens love it, right? But too much activity in certain parts of the brain was what took my friend away from me. I watched and I followed Dr. Zazra, I think he's in Duke University right now. He researches on trying to get a pacemaker for the brain. I hope his research is successful. Basically trying to put out too much electrical activity in certain parts of the brain. And when there's deficiency, be able to augment electrical activity in that part of the brain. Brilliant idea. I hope one day, the same way you have pacemakers for the heart, we can have pacemakers for the brain. So that if you have any depression and certain areas of the brain don't have electrical activity, we can give you an electrical probe that will give you that signal. And we will all be happy and not commit suicides and have all these issues. So I love Haldol. Even though, chronic use of Haldol is not advisable. It has a lot of side effects, but it will help you. It will help the schizophrenic patient, and it's still being used at the same time. Not to say that I'm somebody who want to block your dopamine. I don't do that. I want you to be as blissful as anything you want, stimulate your nucleus accumbens as much as you want. But I love that drug because I felt after, doing a lot of research in antipsychotics, it was one molecule that I realized everything embodies it. All the drugs that we discovered, most of them were based on the structure of Haldol. So I see myself as Mr. Haldol.
Love it. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Is there anywhere that people can follow you or any of the organizations that you are a part of?
Sure. I do have a lot of handles. So on Instagram, my name is Mr. Boss GH. I don't know why I picked that, but I thought it was cool. You can follow me on Twitter is Edward Ofori. It's Ofori 19, I believe. I'll check that. But then you can also follow me on Facebook. Name is Edward Ofori. There's only one account that you see under my name. I do have a lot of other handles, which is Health Info Africa. That is the main platform that I do give a lot of health information. I also work with ACO Radio, which is an online radio station in Chicago, Illinois. And the hashtag for that is ACO, AKO Radio. I do give a lot of health talks on there as well. And you can follow me on all the other platforms as well. I don't have that many. I'm not too active, but I'm active on Facebook a lot. So you put my name in there or you go to ACO Radio, you will see a lot of my works as well.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode with Ed. I certainly learned a lot about dedication and working hard to achieve your goals. We will include all the places to find him in our show notes and also tag him on our Instagram, and you can certainly follow him on Facebook as well. If you liked this week's episode, make sure that you share the episode with your friends and family and subscribe to our podcast on all podcast platforms. We are new to YouTube, so we also have a channel there. I'm excited to announce that merchandise is coming soon, so make sure you're following us on Instagram at Night Shift Delirium and on Twitter at Delirium Shift for updates. Also, during our break in this week's episode, I shared a post from my Instagram from the start of this year. I'm happy to say that I'm fully vaccinated, and I know many of you all are as well. However, we still know that there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy for those of us who are privileged enough to have access to the vaccines. I want to encourage everyone to encourage others to continue to get vaccinated. Remember, vaccines save vacations, and more importantly, they save lives. Vaccinate or isolate. See you on our next